Go ahead and give us an introduction before you get started.
Hey guys, I'm Allistair. I'm a second year computer engineering major. Sorry if my voice isn't too loud. I'm a bit under the weather. But okay. So, has anyone heard of bug bounties and can explain what they are? I guess Jaden? Yeah.
Sure. Bug bounties, essentially you look at like a company's bugs. You find a bug that leads to some sort of vulnerability and the company will pay you for it if you give them like evidence of it.
So exactly. So it's a good way to make money, and it's actually not as hard as people think. So introduction. Yeah, so what Jaden said, bug bounties are a way for companies to reward security researchers who report vulnerabilities on their platform. And based on the severity of it, they can pay you different amounts. So if you look, this is from 2025, Microsoft actually paid out $17 million in rewards, which I think was the highest thus far. So it's a lot of money going into it. So yeah. So I'm going to talk about the different types of programs. So you have individual programs, and these are usually reserved for larger companies. So Microsoft, for example, has one. I just talked about it, and Google has a pretty big one as well. And they also reward for, I'll talk about it later, but just like open source software in general, they pay out for. And you also have platforms which connect companies with hackers. So for example, HackerOne is probably the biggest one. So if you look on the top right, this was actually one of the first big bounties I got from HackerOne. So Neon paid out $2,000 for a vulnerability on PostgreSQL. BugCrowd is also a big one. Integrity as well. So public versus private. So some programs are public in that anyone can submit to them. And this is most programs, but there's also some private ones which you have to be invited to. So you have to either know them or how it works a lot of times. So AWS actually has a system where they have a public VDP. So a VDP is a vulnerability disclosure program. And what this usually means is they don't pay out for bugs, which sounds kind of lame, but if they're big enough, you can get, like experience as well as, I guess, recognition. So if you're on the Discord, you might have seen, but I just got a CVE last week from AWS. So, but if they can also like if they think it's good enough, invite you to the private program, and AWS pays pretty well. But so when you get started, there's the question of whether you get started with a VDP or a BBP, and ultimately it's up to you. But a lot of people think that VDPs are like a waste of time, and they're also like, in a way, like ethically speaking, it kind of diminishes the value of ethical hacking, since companies are able to get hackers to test their platform for free. So I would honestly recommend just starting with bug bounty programs. That's how I did it.
I have to click the slide again.
Slide again? Okay.
Did you get any money from Amazon?
No, they gave out $100 in merch credit, but like some sweaters and stuff.
Hey, okay.
Okay, so legal, this is actually really important, but it's very important to read the scope of a bug bounty program as well as any rules. So does anyone know what a scope is? Nash?
What you're allowed to test?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just the specific assets you're allowed to test. And a lot of people, they just run like subdomain enumerators. So they brute force whatever subdomains there are and automatically just like scan and fuzz the assets, but that can actually be really dangerous since you can get in legal trouble for hitting anything that's out of scope that belongs to the company. And the rules, this could include setting up like a specific test account or a specific user agent. But also what's really important is trying not to access the data of other customers. So if you're able to, for example, find a vulnerability that leaks like the emails, phone numbers, and names of employees in a group. To try and find that, you shouldn't test against just like random people. You should make your own test accounts. And because if you do that, like just even access, not even like reveal it, that sets up big problems with the customer company as well as the company you're working with. So reporting vulnerabilities, even with good intentions, could prove like really expensive. So this is one I just found on Google, and it was the United States filing a suit against Georgia Tech for alleging cybersecurity violations. So how it worked was they had a contract with one of the labs at Georgia Tech, but they didn't follow the rules with certain antiviruses that they had to download. And so now they're getting sued. So that's pretty bad.
This is the Astrolabos incident.
Might be,
Yes,
I don't know.
okay.
They're not settled, right?
I have no idea. Yeah, don't do this. It can't. Okay, so how to get started. So I'm gonna speak from a web perspective, just because that's what I have experience with. So I would get started just like with a basic knowledge of web development, but I guess most of you who have done CTFs probably have some basic knowledge, but knowing it in depth, like front end and back end, like how that DOM works, how requests get processed through different frameworks like Ruby or Django or other big frameworks is recommended, since it gives you, if it's black box, you can kind of guess how the programmer programmed it. But if it's white box, you can also just like read the source code. So if I started over, I would have learned more about this. Now for learning just about web vulnerabilities, what I did was I took the Hack the Box Certified Bug Bounty Hunter certificate course, and you can get this for $8 a month student plan. But I think they renamed it to Certified Web Exploitation Specialist. But I'm not really sure, so you should look into that. And there was also Portswigger Academy, so they made Burp, if you know. You probably used it as a web proxy for web CTFs. So they have really good free resources, but yeah. I wanted to speak as well a bit about non-web avenues. So you can just test like open source software. So Zero Day Initiative is like a company, like a public fund, not a public fund, it's a private fund. But what they essentially do is they buy vulnerabilities for that are severe or critical enough for money, and they report it to whoever had the vulnerability, but they pay you. So it just helps make everything safer. And Google OSS DRP has something similar, where, like I mentioned before, they pay out for bugs on open source software. So like think like FFmpeg or curl or anything that's big and open source. Internet Bug Bounty is something similar as well. You can also test private software. I know Adobe has a really big bug bounty program, and some of the highest paying bugs have been stuff on like Adobe Reader with vulnerabilities reading PDF files. You can also test mobile apps, which are kind of similar actually with web testing. Just requires more specific setup and more knowledge on specific frameworks. And a lot of game companies like Riot Games or Epic Games pay out with new software. So Riot Games was offering a lot of money for vulnerabilities with their Vanguard software, since it works so close to the kernel. So like, for example, if a hacker found a vulnerability that allows them to, given that Vanguard is installed on a computer, like run commands on that computer, that would be really bad. So they paid out a lot for that. So how it works. So first you find a program you like, and then you hunt and find the bug, and then you report it, and then they triage it. And what triage is basically they assign it a specific severity. So it might be low, medium, high, or critical if you did really good. And it also might be informational. Informational just means it's like applicable, but they think it's too insignificant to pay out, or they might lower your reputation on HackerOne or BugCrowd if they think it's really bad. And then you get paid out, hopefully, and they fix the vulnerability. And what's really nice is they might also hire you to retest the bug, so just confirm their fix works, and you can get a couple $100 for that. So here are some tips. So I actually haven't been bug bounty hunting for too long, a little less than a year, but here's what I found really helped. So recommended workflow this is straight from Nahamsek's video. He's a really good YouTuber on bug bounties, so I would recommend you watch him. So it's 1 week to choose the program and find one you really like. So personally for me, I really like developer-oriented programs where you manage databases or you manage secrets or something like that. And so I try to find programs that have a nice, big number of features. It all depends on you. And then 1 week just using the program as a regular user. So this actually helps you learn a lot, from a customer's end, what kind of features there are. And if you get started testing right away, you might tunnel vision and miss a lot of the features that you could have spotted. And then 3 to 4 weeks or more testing for vulnerabilities. So this goes to my second tip, which is stick to a program. So a lot of people get started, and this was me included. They jump from program to program because it's oh, this one I might find a bug. I'm not having too much luck with this one, but you lose all the progress you make when you switch programs. So all the context and all the knowledge you have about the features just gets completely wiped every time you switch. So what I would recommend is learning an app really in depth and knowing it really well. And another one is to read write-ups and blogs. So Medium and personal blogs often have a lot of information on bugs, new bugs, and specific methodologies. And this was actually how I got most of my bugs with PostgreSQL write-ups. And also beware of fake ones, because now there's a lot of AI generated write-ups, and they don't really help, but they look real. So just avoid that. And also avoid, as you read the write-ups, the recon trap and the one-liners in automation, because if you're not able to find a bug manually, it's very unlikely you're able to program something that finds it automatically. And the recon scripts with subdomain enumeration, just generally don't really help you get better. And the final tip would be stick to daily regimen and don't be motivated by bounties, ironically, because it's just if you get motivated by bounties, it'll the first couple of months will be really hard because you'll probably not find any. So it's just you have to stick to a daily grind of at least 1 hour or 2 hours of just bug bounty hunting. Does anyone have any questions or so?
So what was the first bug you found in the first one you talked about?
Well, the first one I talked about was it was the one that paid $2,000 from Neon. That one was just a PostgreSQL vulnerability. So I don't want to get too in depth, but essentially what happened with managed databases, they don't give you super user on Postgres because you're able to run OS commands on their servers if you have the true one. So they just give you an account with specific high-level privileges just in the manager database. But as part of their maintenance, they ran functions on your database with the super user role automatically. But with how function resolution works in PostgreSQL, you can hijack the function and essentially just run functions as a super user and elevate yourself to super user. So, Nash?
Yeah. Do you have a write-up on that?
No, I'm still, so it's kind of I want to do a write-up soon, but I'm still exporting. It's similar to the AWS CVE one. I have some pending from Microsoft and Google as well. So I'm just trying to export it on like all the managed stuff. Before I do a write-up, as corny as that sounds, but yeah. Nash
How
again.
long ago was the neon one?
I think it was midsummer, July.
Is that when you first got into bug bounties?
I started bug bounty hunting seriously maybe late spring. So my first one was a email misconfiguration thing, which it was just like best practice, but it was another company for $250.
You mentioned sticking to a program, I guess Postgre SQL is like your thing.
Yeah. I don't like it's technically different programs, but it's the same kind of niche.
Any other questions for Allistair?
Uh,
Do you give yourself a time limit on how far you want to go into a specific program?
I'd say maybe I'd say 1 month minimum stick to a program, but like after 2 months, if you don't really just like don't find anything and there's nothing else you can really test, well then just move on. Nash?
How much time per day for a month? Because you could spend like a lot of time per day and
Oh,
like,
that's true. I don't know, I guess maybe 90 minutes a day for a month. Or maybe just an hour. So yeah. Like 30 hours, 60 hours ish. But if you continue to find bugs on it, well then I would obviously continue until you can't anymore. So for Neon, I think I kept going. I found another vulnerability for $2,000, and then another one, which is the same one, but they found a reason to demote it back to lower severity. So they paid out $750 for that one. But it was like almost $5K for one program. But then they just ran out of features, so I moved on. That's basically the kind of philosophy, I guess. Well, I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Allistair.